had a little man.
False. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Legislatures in two very red states failed to advance restrictive abortion bills just within hours of one another.
Yay.
It was conservative dissenters, actually, in South Carolina and Nebraska who helped block those bills. Take a look at this. Both state bodies are dominated by Republicans, as you can very clearly see here, by a 2-to-1 ratio. Both went for Trump by about 10 points in the 2020 election. But take a closer look at Nebraska. A state senator there posted this video after that 6-week abortion ban in the state failed by a single vote after one of her Republican colleagues abstained from voting. He had raised concerns about the ban being too early for women to know that they're pregnant. And he warned fellow Republicans about potential political backlash over abortion bans. In South Carolina, where we've heard from lawmakers like Nancy Mace concerns about what those abortion bills could do to Republicans' chances in 2024, there, the state's 5 female senators filibustered on Wednesday against the bill that would have banned nearly all abortions.
Oh, God.
This is State Senator Sandy Senn, who is, I should remind you, a Republican.
Abortion laws have always been, each and every one of them, about control. It's always about control, plain and simple. And in the Senate, the males all have control. We, the women, have not asked for, as the senator from Orangeburg pointed out yesterday, nor do we want your protection. We don't need it. We don't need it.
It's amazing. It's amazing. The whole, stink of the GOP. First of all, you'll never wash it off. And second, it's failing. Their entire agenda of, identifying the fairer sex as the weaker sex has failed. It's failing everywhere. If it fails in South Carolina, if it's failing in Nebraska, if it's failing to get traction, I mean, the only place that it's actually, got traction, Florida, Texas. Yeah. South Carolina, no, not so much. Nebraska, not so much. 5 women. It was 5 women legislators in South Carolina that said no. 3 of those were Republican women. Sandy Senn is one of them. You saw her there for a brief moment. Here's the rest of what she had to say. This is unbelievable.
Abortion laws have always been, each and every one of them, about control. It's always about control, plain and simple.
Yep.
And in the Senate, the males all have control. We, the women, have not asked for, as the senator from Orangeburg pointed out yesterday, nor do we want your protection. We don't need it. We don't need it. There is not a single thing that I can do when women such as me are insulted except to make sure that you get an earful. And you need to blame this earful on following that leader blindly off the cliff for the 3rd time on abortion. And I'm sure you're getting an earful, if you're being honest, from your wives, from your children, from your grandchildren. You cannot tell me that you are not. I know you are.
I know you are, but what am I? No, she's serious. She's saying, I know your daughters, I know your granddaughters, I know your children are all telling you you are bat crap crazy, and we don't all have to be Carrie White's mother. We don't all have to be Piper Laurie here, okay? I see your nasty little dirty pillows. They're breasts, mama, and every woman has them. Dirty pillows. Seriously, you want to see Carrie's mother? You want to see Margaret White? This is Carrie Seekins Crow. Carrie Seekins Crow is the Montana legislator. She actually, her position is very clear. She would actually rather see her daughter commit suicide than be transgendered. She would rather watch her daughter, be in the darkest of depressions. She would rather see her daughter die of self-inflicted injuries, of suicide, than she would help her daughter transition. Because she's not going to let her daughter decide what her family looks like. This is literally Margaret White territory, okay? This is the character Carrie in Stephen King's Carrie from 1976 lives on, man. And the mother's name was Margaret White, played by Piper Laurie. Do you remember her? She was like bizarre, religious, freaky, would pull her own hair out, throw herself on the floor, tell Carrie, you know, I could see your dirty pillows. He's not coming. You know, boys are trouble. And, you know, I'll go downstairs. I'll tell him you're not here. I mean, crazy, crazy crap. This woman just boldly says in public what Carrie's mother said in private. I would rather you die than see anybody mess with your dirty pillows. I will throw myself on the floor and pray to God that you have a precious life of virginity. I mean, this is crazy, but it's real.
One of the big issues that we have heard today and we've talked about lately is that without surgery, the risk of suicide goes way up. Well, I am one of those parents who lived with a daughter who was suicidal for 3 years. Someone once asked me, wouldn't I just do anything to help save her? And I really had to think. And the answer was no.
Oh, my God.
I was not going to give in to her emotional manipulation because she was incapable of making those decisions, and I had to make those decisions for her. I was not going to let her tear apart my family, and I was not going to let her tear apart me because I had to be strong for her. I had to have a vision for her life when she had none, was incapable of having none.
What?
I was lost.
You were lost?
I was scared. I spent hours on the floor in prayer. Because I didn't know that when I woke up, if my daughter was going to be alive or not. But I knew that I had to make those right decisions for her so that she would have a precious, successful adulthood at that time.
What? You think you had to have a vision for your child's life because your child didn't have a vision for their own life? You had to supplant what your family would look like because you felt you were being emotionally blackmailed by your child? I mean, what the F, people? What is that? So this is the debate that's going on in Montana, okay? So you have the point of view of Kerry Seekins Crow saying, I have to decide the quality and the quantity of my child's life because I would rather see her dead than see her transition. That's my, that is how I feel about it. And, why not just, confab with doctors? Why not just find a medical professional that you trust and go see what you could do to get your child out of morbid despair? No, I prayed about it. And, I don't know exactly what happened to her daughter. I mean, I went on a mad Google search looking for, she has 4 kids. So I don't know. I just know that somebody in Billings, Montana with the same name as her daughter is working as a lifeguard at the YWCA. That's all I could find. I don't know. I have no earthly idea. But there's another side to this argument. And the other side is being made by children of the governor of Montana. So it turns out that Gianforte has a son, and his son is non-binary, and his son actually went and had to make a meeting time. I swear to God. His son had to get his dad to pencil him in and agree to a meeting. And then his son went to a meeting with his dad and said to his dad, I don't think you know what you're doing. I don't think you understand the harm you're causing to people. I'm not really clear. And then the governor put out a statement that said, or the governor responded by email to his son and said, I'm interested in what you have to say. Like pencil me in for another meeting. Love, Dad. And then put out a statement saying that he was going to ban transgender health care.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Former Miami Heat star Dwayne Wade is talking about the part of the reason he moved his family out of Florida. He says the growing political movement against the LGBTQ plus community, led by Governor DeSantis, was a major factor. Local 10's Eden Checkle in the newsroom with more on this. Eden.
Louis, the basketball icon, has a 15-year-old daughter who came out as transgender back in 2020. On today's episode of Headliners with Rachel Nichols, Wade admitted that Florida had its benefits, but family came first.
I had to make decisions for my family, not just personal individual decisions. I mean, obviously the taxes is great. You know, having Wade County is great, but my family would not be accepted or feel comfortable there. So that's one of the reasons why I don't live there.
The State House notably passed a bill to make it a felony to provide gender-affirming care to transgender minors like Wade's daughter, Zaya. The 41-year-old had an incredibly successful career with the Miami Heat, winning 3 championships here in what fans have nicknamed Wade County. Wade's comments come as a major blow to Governor DeSantis, who has continually supported and pushed for anti-LGBTQ plus legislation.
It's backfiring. The whole thing is falling apart. So you have a sports icon here in Miami who played for the Miami Heat, right? And his name's Dwayne Wade. They started calling Dade County, which is Miami, Wade County, because he had brought so many championships to Florida. And he had to move out of the state. He had to leave. He had to flee Florida because his 15-year-old daughter was not welcome here. I mean, DeSantis has this war with Disney that's separate and apart from this topic, because that topic has to do with don't say gay. This is about transgendered children being able to receive medical care. And DeSantis is saying he's a better doctor than, doctors. And so now you have people moving out of the state because of the unfriendly nature. So this is going to happen in Montana, too. You know, Montana was actually a purple state for a really long time, and then people started to pile into Montana with their, red, dyed-in-the-wool Republican, ideology. And now people in Montana are like, freaked out by them, really freaked out by the unfriendly nature of Montana. The governor of Montana has a son, as I was telling you. His name is David. Okay, Greg Gianforte is the governor of Montana. He has a son named David, and his son David actually is non-binary. He uses he, they pronouns. I mean, for those of you who get very upset with, a portion of our speech called pronouns, you just can't handle them. You just don't want to know about them. You never did, okay? You never did. You hardly know an adverb from a verb or a noun from a pronoun. So who are you telling me this is too much for you? You never cared about parts of speech. You never cared about grammar. You used to call me a grammarian because I would correct spelling. So, bite me on this. But anyway, Governor Greg Gianforte, obviously a Republican, his son wrote him an email asking for a meeting with his dad, and his top health advisor. And he actually said to his dad, listen, there's a lot of important issues passing through the legislature right now. For my own sake, I've chosen to focus primarily on transgender rights, as that would significantly directly affect a number of my friends. And so he argued that the bills that are restricting, medical care, transition care, and bills that seek to define sex as being either A or B, nothing in between, although the Kinsey scale's been with us forever. And we all know that, there's different, levels of femininity and different levels of masculinity, and everything is flow. Everything is flow, right? And not everybody is the same kind of a woman. Not everybody is the same kind of a man. They used to do this with gay people, too, and make them, not unwelcome and everything else. And then as soon as you put a face on it, and as soon as your neighbors were like same-sex parents, and as soon as you started to interact with same-sex couples and people and children, all of a sudden you realized there's nothing offensive about any of these people. I don't have a problem with them. Well, the same thing is happening now in our society with transgendered people, only because Republicans have decided to target them in a wedge issue, in a culture. I mean, they're canceling culture. Talk about culture, cancel culture. The Republicans hate culture, okay? They hate everything to do with culture. They hate art. They hate music. They've been at war with music since I was a kid. Since Elvis, okay, I'm not that old, but since Elvis, right? He moved his hips funny. We got to ban him. I mean, these sick psycho people have been at war with culture since the beginning of culture. All right. So he said, David Gianforte writes to his father, Greg, and he argues that the bills that are coming through the Montana legislature that his dad looks like he's going to sign, that are restricting transition care and defining sex as binary, and are banning minors from attending drag shows, were violative of his rights as a human being living on this planet. The Free Press actually got hold of these emails. That's how I know this, okay? And they got emails between Governor Gianforte back to his son, and his father, the governor, said, "I would like to better understand your thoughts and concerns. Love, Dad." And so David Gianforte has not commented on any of this, but a spokesman for the governor said in a statement, the governor loves his family and values his son's thoughts, ideas, and perspectives, and that his office will not discuss private family matters. Well, it turns out that, obviously that Montana is the state that banned Zoe Zephyr. She's now sitting in a bench in the hallway in the house, okay, because she's not permitted to enter into the chamber. She's been banned, even though she's been duly elected by the people of Missoula, Montana to represent them. She's not allowed in the house. And I swear to God, so this whole thing started, and his father actually said, I mean, this is just unbelievable. The son said, listen, the American Academy of Pediatrics support this care, and that banning it poses a serious health risk to young people. David Gianforte said in a Free Press interview that his father had been thoughtful in their meeting and that the governor had listed reasons that he was going to support the bill banning transition care, medical care. And one of his reasons was, quote, "I'm concerned about my career." Oh, I'm concerned about my career. I'm aware that being able to stay in the position of governor is dependent on staying in favor of the Republican Party's policies. And so David Gianforte said he finds his father's response bizarre. The governor had written to his son saying, "I met with transgender people and I understand their struggles are real and my heart goes out to them, but gender affirming care is a misleading term. It's Orwellian newspeak." And so David Gianforte, the son, said, he talks about compassion towards children, the youth of Montana, and simultaneously he's taking away health care from the youth of Montana. It's basically a contradiction in my mind, but obviously we now know why. They don't believe that seeing children suffer is a good plan or a good policy. They just worry about their career, about their reelect, and money.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
I want to take a minute right up front to address what we have heard over and over again is the reason for this bill, which is to protect children. The truth is that kids who are not trans can and do access the health care that is defined in this bill all the time. Ironically, puberty blockers, which are described here as experimental, were not created for trans kids. And they are often used by doctors and families who have a child who enters puberty early or who has other health or developmental issues. Those parents get to make the choice with their doctors for their kids to hit pause and to create more time and space for their kid. Kids who are not trans sometimes receive hormone therapy. And kids who are not trans often receive surgery, including the types of surgeries that are defined in this bill. If you're a parent in Montana and your daughter is passionate about gymnastics, has an ambition for gymnastics, but goes through puberty and develops a body that isn't compatible with that sport, she can have surgery, breast reduction surgery, legally, as long as it is about gymnastics and not gender. If your daughter is on the youth beauty pageant circuit and you want her to have breast implants and permanent makeup tattoos at 15, that is your right as a parent, as long as it is with regard to beauty pageants and not gender. If we really wanted to protect kids, why not protect all kids? But that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is carving out a section of kids and families and treating them differently. And in doing so, I believe that we are turning our backs on some pretty deeply held beliefs that I think I share with many of you. Beliefs around privacy, around parental rights, around fairness and freedom, and particularly freedom from government intrusion.
That was a brilliant speech, I have to say. That was educational for a lot of people who don't realize that non-transgendered children who enter into puberty early, like, 9 or 10 years old, and it does happen, actually are prescribed puberty blockers to give them more time and space before they actually hit puberty, before they actually start developing into adults, right? Before their brains can catch up with what's about to happen with their bodies. So there's one example of what a puberty blocker might be prescribed for other than a trans child. And then the whole idea, and we know that this is a thing, the children's beauty pageant circuit. Well, if you want your young child who's competing on the beauty pageant circuit to have breast implants ahead of their 18th birthday so that she can stay competitive in, these beauty pageants, right? You as a parent have a right to say yes on a form that will allow a plastic surgeon to do breast implants on a minor child. Same with the permanent makeup route that, you could choose for your beauty pageant circuit daughter. You're allowed as a parent to make that decision along with your daughter about whether or not to put permanent eyeliner, permanent lip liner, permanent blush on your child's face pre-18th birthday, if you and your child agree that that is what her passion is and she wants to be competitive. And the same thing with the gymnastics thing. Those bodies of gymnasts are very small. They're very tiny little bodies. It helps them to get centrifugal force when they curl up, and the speed in which they're allowed, their bodies can rotate. Yeah. It's dependent on the form. It's dependent on the length and the breadth and the depth of the body. And so you might actually agree that your child's passion is to be a competitive gymnast, and they've developed breasts that are incompatible with the sport and the competitive nature of that sport. And so you might agree to sign off on breast reduction surgery for your particular gymnast daughter. And the same for puberty blockers for your gymnast daughter. I mean, whoever really gave that any thought? We never needed to give that thought because that was typically something that parents and children would discuss in their homes when it came to the beauty pageant circuit, or when it came to permanent makeup, or when it came to tattoos of any sort, or when it came to gymnastics or being competitive in ice skating or any of the sports that require a certain body type. Ballerinas, the little bunheads, they all know what I'm talking about, right? And so the idea that suddenly mutilation of children is happening, but only in the trans community, is bullcrap. Bullcrap. The only reason why this is a thing is because it's a wedge issue. And again, the Republicans have no intention of solving any of our real problems. They don't even want to pay off our debt. They would like to see the whole thing burned down to the ground. If you, ask Paul Gosar, who is insane and has power as a member of the House. If you ask Andy Biggs, if you ask Lauren Boebert, if you ask, crazy Marjorie Taylor Greene, they would say burn it down to the ground. Just burn it down. let the United States default. Let us have a massive depression. Let us have, bleeding, hemorrhaging jobs. Let us have, hyperinflation and all that. And we'll blame Joe Biden for it because that's who we are. That's what we do. But for now, we need a placeholder. We need something that's going to rally the troops. And so we're going to look at the most vulnerable people in our society that we can find. Used to be just plain old gay people. Well, we got to know plain old gay people. Why? Some of us grew up with plain old gay people as sisters or brothers or, cousins or, mothers or fathers. Some of us actually realize there's no difference between a gay sister and a non-gay sister. There's no difference between a gay mom and a non-gay mom. There's no difference. The love is the same. The humanity in the person is the same. Everything is the same. And once you get the stigma washed off of your grody little body, and you could open your freaking eyes and realize that transgender people are human as human can be, and that they have hopes, dreams, wants, desires, that they have, the right to live a life of their choosing, the right to their own vision for their own life, and their parents need to have the ability to do whatever is in the best interest of their child without government interference. Then and only then will you be free. Now, I have to say, this generation of new adults, this generation of legislators, this generation of Gen Z legislators, the Max Frosts of the world, the Justins, the Pearson and the Jones, the Megan Hunt in Nebraska, even a few Republicans, even a few decent Republican, but predominantly women, understand that this is all about control. Some understand it's all about the reelect. Others understand it's all about the fundraising, the donor money. It's all about the issue, not the people.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, so Dylan Mulvaney, who, is an influencer on the internets and has a large, millions of people follow her on TikTok, follow her on Instagram, etc., was, briefly featured on a commemorative, not in the stores, but it doesn't matter. She was featured on a Bud Light can, and this, set people to going and getting their semi-automatic weapons and their, large capacity magazines, all loaded with high-velocity bullets so that they could shoot at Bud Light cans, right? So that they could, punish Bud Light for somehow embracing a person's humanity that they couldn't understand. I don't know what this is. I don't know why they need so much hatred in their lives in order to feel anything. But I guess it's like cutting, I guess it's like that where you can only feel stuff through pain. I guess they can only feel stuff through hatred, and dehumanizing others and triggering. I don't know what it is. But Dylan Mulvaney took a brief pause on her Instagram page and her TikTok feed, but now she has said she's composed, herself, and she would like to talk to you for a brief moment.
So hi, long time no talk. How are you? You might want to grab a beverage. This is going to be a longer one, but I'm doing okay, and I'm trying this new thing where I don't pressure myself to share anything before I'm ready. And I'm actually sitting with my emotions, not reacting, waiting to respond. And shockingly, I can't recommend it more. Therapy is paying off here, people. But I do have some thoughts to share with you. So I've been having crazy deja vu because I'm an adult, I'm 26. And throughout childhood, I was called too feminine and over the top. And here I am now being called all those same things, but this time it's from other adults.
Isn't that special?
And if they're going to accuse me of anything, it should be that I'm a theater person and that I'm camp. But this is just my personality, and it always has been. What I'm struggling with most is that I grew up in a conservative family, and I'm extremely privileged because they still love me very much.
Yay.
And I grew up in the church. and I still have my faith, which I am really trying to hold on to right now. But I've always tried to love everyone, you know, even the people that make it really, really hard. And I think it's okay to be frustrated with someone or confused. But what I'm struggling to understand is the need to dehumanize and to be cruel. I don't think that's right. You know, dehumanization has never fixed anything in history ever. And, you know, I'm embarrassed to even tell you this, but I was nervous that you were going to start believing those things that they were saying about me, since it is so loud. But I'm just going to go ahead and trust that the people who know me and my heart won't listen to that noise. What I'm interested in is getting back to making people laugh and to never stop learning. And going forward, I want to share parts of myself on here that have nothing to do with my identity. And I'm hoping those parts will still be exciting to you and will be enough. And to those of you who support me and choose to see my humanity, even if you don't fully understand or relate to me, thank you.
I mean, what is wrong with, seeing somebody as a human being that is a human being? How is that impossible for some people in this country to consider that is a human being who feels, a human being who laughs, a human being who makes you laugh? I mean, the first time I ever saw Dylan Mulvaney, I thought she was adorable, because she is. And why do you have to dehumanize her in order to feel better about yourself? Isn't that the real dilemma? Now, when she's talking about history and she's saying that dehumanizing people have never solved anybody's problems in history, you know exactly the kind of dehumanization she is referring to. You know exactly what everybody is thinking of right at this very moment as being one of the lowest points in humanity's existence on this planet. The dehumanization of large swaths of people, and back then, in the World War II era of propaganda and hatred and dehumanization, and comparing people to animals, rodents, we do it with African Americans and other, anybody you don't like gets compared to an animal. In the case of Jews, it was rodents, it was rats, right? And made so small and so insignificant in their humanity that you could, kill them. That's what she's talking about. And that is never going to put a nickel in your pocket. That is never going to solve any of the problems that we have. And you know who knows it more than anybody? The people who are serving it up to you on a silver platter. The people who have absolutely no intention of doing the right thing on your behalf. The people who are putting work requirements into food stamp benefits for 64-year-olds in the hinterlands, people who live in rural places where there is no work. These are the same people that are feeding you a steady diet of dehumanize this group, hate that group. It's okay. It's popular. And all it is the hatred du jour. That's all it is. And it isn't going to, do anything to help your life. And God help you if one day you start a family and your child comes home and your child has some problems or some things they want to talk to you about. You're never going to get the stink off of you if you are on the side of dehumanizing humans. It is just it is a moral sin. It's a mortal sin, if you ask me. You didn't, and you shouldn't. I'm not going to be your spiritual guru, okay? That's not my wheelhouse. I do it for myself. But I'm not going to do it for you, but you instinctively know. You do. And while I have you here in my little, fiefdom here, in my little controllable environment here, I'm going to tell you that I know if you are going down that bad road of saying, but I just don't relate, or I just don't understand, or I find them, different, and I don't know anybody I never got close to, don't dehumanize. Do not hate. There is nothing out of the ordinary. There is nothing inhuman. There is nothing that hasn't happened 1,000,000 times in history. There is nothing. This is just like the argument about abortion. This is just like the argument about being gay. It's all in order to drive wedges between us. Because if there is no wedge between us, I mean, listen, they physically draw the wedge. That's what, gerrymandering is. That is a physical line that they are drawing in between us in order to dilute our voices into separate, disparate districts so that the organization of us in one district won't penalize them, right? So they not only draw physical lines between us on maps, but they're drawing them in your head. They're trying to tell you that human is different than your human, and that there's a difference in humanity. There's a difference. There is no difference. None. You either extend humanity to all humans, or you have no business talking about humanity, or your respect for it, or your moral obligations to other humans, or your religious affiliation with other humans. Everyone in your church, everyone in your synagogue, everyone in your mosque is a human being. And if you can't see that, then you're failing. You're failing at being a person of religion. You're failing at being decent. You're failing at being moral. You're failing at being a human being. And I feel bad for you because being human is full of flaws, but it's full of moments of intense and wonderful joy and laughter. This hatred, this is not a normal thing. This is something that's taught to you. This is something that is literally, built in you and then refined in you by people who have an interest in exploiting you. Why do you think one of the first things that people who suffer with addiction learn is to live and let live? Because the judgment heaped upon them and others is debilitating. It ruins lives. And I just want you to understand that all of these people that you've met today through their little video clips, whether it's Dylan Mulvaney or S.J. Howell in Montana, who's non-binary, or Greg Gianforte's son, or Zoe Zephyr, they're all humans.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created
equal to the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Whatever we are capable of doing as artists and as a group to help propagandize the civil rights revolution.
People said, when did you become an activist? I said, the day I was born. The purpose of art is to show life not as it is, but to show life as it should be. And artists are compelled by the very nature of the gift to do a lot of things that inspire.
Is that the secret, in a sense, that everybody needs a passion that drives them?
I think people who have not experienced a life passion, something that they want to get up every day and go do, have really missed the fullest value of life. I think anybody who met Dr. King had their life changed. He was compelling. I just always felt that one of the great blessings of my life is the fact that I came to be part of his journey.
What do you think he would think of where we are now, as a country?
I think if Dr. King lived, the mission would have taken another trajectory. I think he would have led us down another path. And he had such faith in the American dream. He really did. He believed very strongly in this country. Nothing else needs changing. We are the problem. We are the flaw.
But we're also the solution.
We're the only force that I know of that carries the solution.
What would you like the last page to be of your book?
He gave us his best, or he gave us the best he had. Well, that's all I keep doing.
So we lost a couple of people this week, and Harry Belafonte is one of the people that I wanted to remember this week because not only because of the fact that he was 96 years old and was an activist his entire life and sacrificed most of his career opportunities to be an activist. He wasn't an actor who became an activist. He was an activist who became an actor/singer, entertainer. And I just didn't know him and did not feel comfortable explaining to you who Harry Belafonte was. Now, he died at 96 years old a couple days ago from congestive heart failure, which, also got Loretta. But I found an article written by somebody named Paul Kix in the Los Angeles Times that actually summed up for us what Harry Belafonte's purpose and what Harry Belafonte wanted to be remembered for. And so I'm just going to read it to you because it does justice to the way I think we ought to remember a man who lived 100 years ago, who grew up in the 30s and 40s and 50s, pre-Voting Rights Act, pre-Civil War, Civil Rights Act, right? Civil something. But here's what Paul Kix writes. He said, I never met Harry Belafonte, but for the last 3 years, I've thought about him every day. Over those years, I researched and wrote a book on Project Confrontation, the campaign in the spring of 1963 in Birmingham, Alabama, to break segregation once and for all or be broken by it. I believe what happened in Birmingham, 10 weeks of nonviolent protest and the brute force levied against it, forever altered the trajectory of America. Project Confrontation led to the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, Martin Luther King Jr.'s martyrdom, and then a new life for his country. Everything from the rise of the black middle and upper classes to Barack Obama's presidency to my ability as a white man to marry a black woman and together to raise our 3 kids on a quiet street where no one threatens us simply because of who we are. See how everything old is new again? Belafonte made my life possible and yours too. It's the simple truth of his role in Project Confrontation. The protests were days from launching in Birmingham, and King and his Southern Christian Leadership Conference needed to finance the campaign. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference was broke, and Bull Connor, running Birmingham's violent police force, had repelled decades' worth of attempts to integrate the city. In other words, before SCLC gambled lives going up against Bull Connor and Birmingham this time, it had to figure out how to pay for Project C. Martin Luther King called Harry Belafonte and asked if Harry would stage a fundraiser. The two had an easy rapport after 7 years of friendship, but they had to use code words on the phone. They were worried about an FBI wiretap. Belafonte ultimately agreed to hold a fundraiser at his New York apartment, the better to avoid prying eyes. He would determine the guests, and better still, he would tell them this was their chance to invest in an upcoming campaign instead of an ongoing campaign. The SCLC had never thought to do that before. In late March 1963, Martin Luther King, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, and Birmingham pastor Fred Shuttlesworth arrived for the party at Belafonte's apartment at 300 West End Avenue. Oh, my God. It was a palatial spread, a 21-room apartment, 7,200 square feet in all. Belafonte dedicated one half of the massive space to living and the other to entertaining. More than 75 people gathered there that night. Actors Ossie Davis and Sidney Poitier, the only person present who was arguably a bigger celebrity than Belafonte himself. There was James Weschler, the editor-in-chief of the liberal New York Post. That was a long time ago. It's now owned by Rupert Murdoch, just for a point of reference. James Weschler, the editor-in-chief of the liberal New York Post. Hugh Morrow, New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller's top advisor. Tim Wicker and Anthony Lewis among the New York Times' most prominent writers. But above all, there were dozens of deep-pocketed New Yorkers intrigued by what Belafonte had billed as a secret and very special evening. Belafonte's drawing power in America and among the liberal whites gathered in his apartment lay in part in his skin tone. Quote, "The thing is," the black poet and critic Stanley Crouch later said, "Harry isn't black. Harry's Jamaican grandmother was white. Harry's own complexion had yellow undertones. He was high yellow, as he learned as a kid in Harlem, and this made him less threatening to whites. I think people perceive him as a nice person," Johnny Carson once said. Harry hated that. He was not nice. He was not approachable. He was instead deeply aware of the broad discrimination all black Americans contended with. He had grown up in a New York more segregated than his forebears' colonial Jamaica, and of the discrimination among black people based on color. This obsession with complexion enraged Harry. For Dad, it was about changing all of society, his daughter Adrienne once told The New Yorker. That change started with Belafonte's own choices. "I wasn't an artist who became an activist. I was an activist who became an artist." It was Harry's most admirable trait, even more alluring than his high cheekbones. He was never interested in the easy life his beauty and performing talent afforded him. In spite of his skin tone, or perhaps because of it, Belafonte chose the hard road of true activism. That night in his living room, introducing the entourage from the Southern Conference, he had already given much to the civil rights movement. He'd given his money, hundreds of thousands of dollars by 1963, eventually millions. He'd given his marriage. His first wife, Marguerite, divorced him after FBI agents stopped by one too many times with questions about why Harry was so involved in protests. He'd given his reputation, and Hollywood producers thought he was difficult. By 1963, he had refused offers where black characters were kind-hearted and even-tempered and propped-up eunuchs, which in Harry's view was every movie Hollywood made. He abandoned his film career for the civil rights movement.
I watched it on TV.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
In the South, we have a saying, a dying mule kicks the hardest. These systems of white supremacy, these systems of transphobia, of homophobia, of plantation politics are dying. And so that's why we're seeing this extreme reaction, because they know that look at the screen right now. This represents the future of America. This represents the vision of America that they're so fearful of, because it is an inclusive America. It's one that affirms human dignity. It's one that affirms our solidarity with each other, our connection. But let them be on notice that this is just the beginning, that we are going to continue to push forward toward that vision of America that lives up to what it says on paper, towards that vision of America that challenges this notion that people like us don't belong in elected office, because we're not going in there, to make friends. We're going in there to make change. And that's the difference, is that we are not going to assimilate. We're not going to conform to a system that's been meant to make us feel small, meant to stifle our voices and the voices of our constituents. But we're going with this bold mandate to say that we have to push forward together, and that these systems, that their time has come, and that a new generation is rising up to make America what it ought to be.
I mean, the spirit lives on. You understand? The spirit continues. The idea that, America can and needs to be more inclusive of people that have always lived among us, but that we have sidelined or belittled or created an environment in which they will feel small, or at least smaller than. It's almost over. It's almost over. This next, we skipped generations of activism. Why? Because people stop, thinking that there's a need for it. People start to think, oh, things are improved, things are better. Everybody, has an equal shot at it. Everybody's got a bite at the apple. And, the American dream is alive and well. It's not on, it doesn't need resuscitation. It doesn't need effort. It doesn't need tending to. It doesn't need, protest. No. Don't you get it? History constantly repeats itself unless you actually know it and see the signs and understand when it's time to step up to the microphone and take your turn at denouncing the dehumanization of this group or that group or any group that it's not our way. It's not an American thing. Now, there are parts of this country, and again, there are small slivers, but there's enough of them to make themselves, felt and heard, and their entire reason for being is to make others feel smaller. And obviously, they will never stop with, resentment and fear of the other. They won't. But there's so many more people in this country that want more of the American dream, not less of the American dream, and want more people to be a part of it, not less people to be a part of it. And those are the people like Harry Belafonte. Those are the people like Martin Luther King Jr. Those are the people like Ralph Abernathy. Those are the people like, the Schwarmers, people who literally say, I'm going to take it on before it takes me on. I'm going to crush the system of inequality, or it's going to crush me, but I'm taking that chance. I'm in. That kind of bravery is still evident, okay? That's what Justin Jones and Justin Pearson and Zoe Zephyr and Megan Hunt, who's just a mom, okay? She's a mom in Nebraska who happens to have a transgendered son, and she refuses to allow her son to grow up in America feeling less than, or being made to feel less than, or being smaller than, or being treated differently by medicine simply because his particular need for medicine isn't something that somebody, over here understands or feels comfortable with. I'm sure her son isn't comfortable in his own skin either. But he doesn't lash out at your comfort. And that's what you're doing to him. So when you look at the lives of people who, there's always that expression. You always hear it at award shows, and you always hear it from grateful people after something earth-changing or life-shattering or life-building, improving happens to them. They go, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. We stand on the shoulders of the great ones, right? Well, Harry Belafonte was one of those great ones, and we really did lose one of the original fighters for equality in this country when we needed him most back in the day. So he had this fundraiser at his apartment, and he had Ralph Abernathy and he had Reverend Shuttlesworth there, and they were orchestrating the Birmingham campaign, a 10-week nonviolent protest in Birmingham, Alabama, where cops raped black women with regularity, where Bull Connor literally used fire hoses and dogs on human beings to make them small, to make them know their place, to treat them as subhuman, to treat them as if they were not human, they were animals. The Klan, literally back in the day in Birmingham, Alabama, castrated, literally physically castrated black men. I think in the history of this country, it would be difficult to find another American city as racist and violent as Birmingham, Alabama in 1963. And yet, people dared to confront it nonviolently, 10 weeks in a campaign called Operation Confrontation. Edward R. Murrow reported from Birmingham prior to Project Confrontation and told his producer, Edward R. Murrow told his producer, that he hadn't seen any place like Birmingham, Alabama since Nazi Germany. So this writer of this article, Paul Kix in the Los Angeles Times, he writes, so it wasn't a dangerous folly to stage the largest civil rights campaign to date in Birmingham. It was being prepared to die before you can live. That's what Reverend Shuttlesworth said. Somebody in the living room at this fundraiser that Harry Belafonte had said, isn't this a dangerous folly? I mean, this place they will kill us, right? So don't you think it's dangerous to stage the largest civil rights campaign to date in Birmingham, Alabama? And Reverend Shuttlesworth said, quote, you have to be prepared to die before you can begin to live. And that line wowed everybody in the room, all the donors. And Harry Belafonte that night was able to raise $475,000 for Project Confrontation, which today is about $4.5 million in one night in his apartment. And what happened that spring in Birmingham, when Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested and wrote his letter from a Birmingham jail, that's when Bull Connor decided the fire hoses and the dogs and, and the Klan members started bombing the hotel where Martin Luther King stayed. But ultimately, the decent and the good prevailed, right? Because we know we got civil rights legislation with the Kennedy brothers sponsoring it. And we know that we were able to change collective history. And we need to do it again. We have Harry Belafonte and others like him to thank for the original civil rights efforts in some of the most horrific places in this country. But we also have a new generation of Belafontes.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
When we're out on the streets, we're protesting for our rights, the rights of our neighbors, the trans community, LGBTQ plus community, black folks, immigrants, poor people in this country. It's young people, but it's all generations coming together. And what we know, and we heard this time and time again at our press conference earlier today, is we stand on the shoulder of giants and the elders who've come before us. And, I've heard many times, and I'm sure Representative Zephyr and Jones have heard this too, the young people will save us. And here's the thing, it shouldn't have to be up to the young people to save us. We need everybody working together, multiracial, multi-generational, coming together to fight for the world we deserve. That's how we build an America that's true to its promise. And an America that's true to its promise rejects fascism and embraces democracy. A democracy where somebody like Representative Zephyr can stand up for their constituents, for her constituents that deserve to have that representation. But what we see happening is the right wing understands that time is not on their side, that this incoming generation of voters is voting for Democrats and people who are going to fight for them. And so they're clenching to that power with everything that they can do. And that's why we're seeing this rise in right wing fascism across the country. But we're going to fight it and we're going to win.
So we have a generation that will join us, the boomers. That's what we are. We have a generation that's ready and able and interested in partnering with our generation, with across sexual orientation, across racial lines, across age groups, across immigration status, and just saying, listen. Fascism, it comes and it goes, and there's always going to be, some element in our society, in our culture that craves an autocrat, that just wants one and done, that says, when a guy steps up to the microphone and in the most fraudulent P.T. Barnum way says, I alone can fix it, they want to go, yeah, okay, so it's on you, you do it. And there's not enough of them. There's just not enough of them. And so they have every incentive to cause fascism to creep up. They have every incentive to crash the economy. The only reason why you saw a change in chancellors, let's say, in Germany around that time was not just because, there was, a dehumanization effort to say that these people are not human. No, it was because of hyperinflation and a Great Depression. I mean, people were literally walking around with barrels full of worthless Deutschmarks, like wheelbarrows full of Deutschmarks, trying to buy a loaf of bread. That's hyperinflation. And this is what would happen if they default on the debt. This is exactly what it would look like. It would look just like the Weimar Republic. It would look just like hyperinflation. It would look just like a Great Depression. And they would be then much more able to sell you on the idea of I alone can fix it and just give this whole mess over to one strong man. They've already started signaling their intent with the book banning Okay, they've already told you about, the expelling of elected leaders, that they don't give a damn about democracy. It means nothing to them. They're already dehumanizing yet another group of people in this country. There's nothing new about transgendered people. Nothing at all. Transgendered people have been with us since the beginning of people. That's just a fact. And I've often asked religious people the question, if God made man and woman in his image, what sex is God? No one can answer it because nobody knows the answer to that. So don't even try. But this dehumanization that is always part of fascism it's sitting right next to you. It's sitting with us right now, on top of the book banning, on top of the expelling of Democratic leaders, on top of the gerrymandering, on top of the rigging elections, on top of big lies, on top of propaganda stations and channels, on top of it. And so you have to say to yourself, I'm so glad that there's a generation of Max Frosts and AOCs and Ayanna Presleys and Cori Bushes and Justins and Gloria Johnson and Megan Hunt in Nebraska and Zoe Zephyr. I'm so grateful that we have people to partner with, where we know the history and we can teach it to them, and they have the energy to fight the fight that needs to be fought. We're very lucky that we can still freely speak to each other. I don't know how long that will last. Honestly, I don't. I've seen entire platforms be taken over by autocrats. I've seen entire, things that used to be, hey, here's some pictures of my family, turn into, death by politics. And I've seen, Twitter now wanting to charge people for, information on what subway to take. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like everything that, we take for granted is being infiltrated with, capitalist, autocrats, people who want it all of it, not some of it, not their share of it, not what they've earned. They want it all, by hook or by crook, by any means necessary. They just want all of it. And by it, I mean all the money, all the power, all the ability to shape the future, all the ability to teach the past. What I tell you, what did Orwell once tell us in the most simple, illustrative way? He who controls the present controls the past. And whoever controls the past controls the future. And so you have people out there that know this and have money to affect that kind of control over your present. And if they can ban history, if they can keep you unaware of Harry Belafonte, of Martin Luther King Jr., of Fannie Lou Hamer, or of any person who pushed to make it better, who pushed for a more inclusive society, a less judgy place. If they can take that away from you, that knowledge about how it gets done and who organizes it and what it looks like when it's organized, and if they can keep information from you about who you could reach out to that might have the energy to continue on with this good fight, then they can control the future for you and your children. They're already controlling the future for our girls. They're already, controlling the future for transgendered, people. They tried to control the future for gay Americans. It didn't work. It never does. You know why? Because it's evil. And it's ugly. And most people walk right up to it and then see it in its gory, gross, natural state, and they are revulsed. They are repelled. It makes them gag. And they either walk away or they say, where do I sign up to fight this? I'll accept any of those. I'll accept either of those as a result for people who still think you need a strong man to choose the future for you. Just walk away or join us. Either decision is acceptable to me. Just quit being a bully and quit letting resentment and hatred be your motivation for your entire day. Because that's just not going to produce a nickel for you.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I wonder now, as you sit here and you look back at the legacy of the Jerry Springer Show, is there anything that you would change about it?
No, I think what was really the only good thing about the show, or at least the part that I thought, is that it was the first time we really saw regular people on television. When people criticize the show, if you're honest about it, they're not criticizing what they're talking about, because celebrities will do the exact same thing. Celebrities will go on the late night shows. They will talk about who they've slept with, what their life has been like, what drugs they've been using, what misbehavior they've had. And we can't buy their albums quickly enough. We can't go to the movies quickly enough. Why? Because if you're rich, if you're famous, if you're good looking, we give you a pass. The things that, how many times do people take these talk shows and they say, oh, these people are trash? No. Maybe they didn't have the same luck in the gene pool of parents. Maybe they weren't born with the same brain. They didn't get the same education. But we're all alike. We're not better than these people. We just dress better.
But let me ask you this. Oftentimes it was regular people just beating each other up.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes regular people don't do that all the time.
Well, let me tell you. You get a professor from Harvard who teaches English. He comes home one night and he finds out that his wife was sleeping with the next door neighbor. He sees that. You think he says, oh, my gosh, dear, forsooth, what have I found? Please get out of the bedroom. No, he throws something, he gets angry, he probably starts cursing. I'm telling you, we're all alike. We get a moment. These people are coming on television when they choose to, purely voluntary, and they talk about what's going on in their life. News never does that. What news does the same thing about telling about people's lives, but they never ask permission. A newscaster never says, you know what, if this story makes you feel bad, if this story hurts your family, if this story ruins your reputation, we won't run it. No, news just plows right through. At least on these talk shows, it's all voluntary. You choose to come on the show. You decide what you want to be talked about. And I find that much more democratic than what we do normally in the media.
So we lost Jerry Springer, too, who was, obviously a fixture in every one of our lives for 30 years. Now, I knew Jerry Springer. I knew him very, very well. Jerry Springer was a super nice man. He was a really good person, just so you know. But he understood what he was doing. I mean, back then, when he was sitting there defending that show, he knew that he was pretty much everything we don't respect. He was a lawyer, he was a mayor, he was a major market news anchor, he was a talk show host, and he said, pray for me if I get to heaven, because all of me is going. The thing that was respectable about what Jerry Springer did was Jerry Springer truly tried to say we're all the same. Everybody's got problems, everybody deals with them, a stressful situation by being stressed. Now, was the show produced to the point where people were picked through so that the most explosive humans would get booked on that show, or the freakiest looking or the trashiest? But yes, it was. But he knew that. When he would go and speak to, students or classrooms or whatever, he would say, to the people who invited me, thanks, and, I'm honored, but to anybody who objects to me being here, I agree with you. I would have picked somebody else too. That was Jerry Springer. And he died of pancreatic cancer and at 79 years old. And, like I said, I knew him. He was a nice person. But that show was the beginning of the end of, daytime TV. I mean, really. But it went on for 30 freaking years, 30 years. So there's a marketplace for watching people fight. And if it belongs, like, let's say, in a daytime talk show instead of on the streets, I'm for it.
You mentioned it went on for about 30 years, and that's right, 28 seasons, thousands of episodes, and I really respected that at the end of every single episode, he had a unique Jerry's final thought. I thought, you know what? No matter what else he's doing here, lowbrow, whatever, that's to be respected. I liked it a lot.
It was completely low. I mean, it was the bottom of the barrel of people able to cope and deal. Obviously, that's what the show was about. It was about people who could not cope and deal. People who needed to beat each other up, or people who need to scream at each other on a stage in public. People, I mean, it was tawdry. It was like an arena. But he knew it. I mean, he totally knew it. And he knew that those people would take it out to the streets if they didn't have, a place to go to air their grievances. So my whole thing is, if that's what you need in order to put hatred and the desire to beat somebody up, if watching it is going to stop you from doing it, then go ahead and watch it. Have the outlet. But he would always say, what at the end, it was like, be nice to each other, or
something. Be kind and some things.
Take care of each other.
Be kind to each other. I think it was be kind to each other. I'll look it up. But you're right there. It was nice. His final thought was always nice, and he tried to put a bow on all the violence and degradation that he had.
Listen, he in the end was a lawyer. Okay, Jerry Springer lawyered everything, but he was, honestly, I swear to God, a very decent, nice person. He really was. I mean, I don't want to tell the story, but he gave me a chance to audition for my own daytime talk show. That is not my wheelhouse, let's just say, but he did. He did. He was that nice. He was.
It was take care of yourselves and each other.
That's it. Brother David.
Word to infinity. Word, Jerry. Thank you, sister, for sharing my former colleague's marvelous Harry Belafonte summation, because it just put it.
What do you mean, your former colleague?
Well, I used to work for that publication.
What publication?
The LA Times.
Oh! I thought you meant Harry Belafonte. I was like,
no. I should have been so lucky. He walked the walk and talked the talk, and in his own way, so did Mr. Springer. And
I know he gave people a way to deal and cope when they couldn't.
Exactly, which brings me to what I'm memorizing on tyranny. Number 8 is stand out. Someone has to. It is easy to follow along. It can be strange to do or say something different, but without that unease, there is no freedom. Remember Rosa Parks. The moment you set an example, the spell of the status quo is broken, and others will follow. And boy, you brought up 2 today. What a week. And meanwhile, my home state, they barely voted down the override on the governor's veto of the trans bathroom bill, but the bigger bill is coming up and expected to be. The struggle continues. The struggle is always.
Well, Kansas settled on a small little bathroom bill, which is disgusting. Okay, separate bathroom. It's disgusting. And they had to override the governor Laura Kelly's veto to do it, and they did 84-40, so that they got their 2/3 majority. And so there are rules, people, about bathrooms in schools. There are rules, people, about bathrooms in public places, even in parks. Okay, that's what Kansas settled on. But they're not going to pass the ban on transgender health care. So
the big one.
Yeah, right. And the same thing in Montana, not Montana. What am I thinking of? South Carolina, no abortion.
South Carolina, right,
no abortion ban. What's the other one? Nebraska. Yeah. So, we're making progress. Their whole, agenda of hatred is starting to fall apart, only because people are coming up close and personal to it.
Well, exactly.
And they're revolted by it.
Yeah. And then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him and saying, Master, which is the great commandment of the law? And Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
I mean, I don't know what happened to people. I honestly don't. I mean, I understand that people are flailing in their lives. I understand life is hard. It's hard for me too. It's hard for everybody.
It's hard for us all. Yeah,
it is. It's a challenge. Life is an obstacle course. It's a challenge. It's whatever you want to call it. Okay, it's not the easiest thing that your spirit will ever go through. It is obviously, full of challenges. But when did you decide that you need to dehumanize or bully or treat other people poorly, like with disregard and disdain, in order to make yourself feel better? When did that happen to you? Because that is the very moment where you have given up.
Exactly. Gorgeous girdles for everybody.
Thank you. All right, everybody, listen, try and have a weekend. The right-wing lunatic fringe is getting defeated in right-wing lunatic fringy legislatures across this country. So that's the happy, good news. The bad news is they're not done. They're just not.